Gavin Newsom has been in leadership and governance in California for 20 years. Why in the world would anyone trust you to redesign the city that you allowed to burn? Hey there, friends, fans, and foes of Dad Saves America. John Popola here, and I wanted to take this Friday to dive deeper into the dichotomy that we're seeing play out in California between, frankly, radical utopian dreams on one hand and failure of basic brass tacks governance on the other. And I think nobody embodies this level of, let's just say, two-faced governance quite like Gavin Newsom.
Governor Gavin Newsom, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Good to be with you.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Is this or will it be the worst natural disaster in the history of the United States?
I think it will be in terms of just the costs associated with it, in terms of the scale and scope. I'll don't need to remind the folks in California, we had the Tubbs Fire, 5,600 houses were lost, and of course Camp Fire, we had 18,000 housing units lost, and 85 people that lost their lives. Currently, we're getting confirmation from the coroner, so we always have to be careful on the death toll.
Why am I laughing? What's going on here? What's this stuff? What's this stuff? What is this? I mean, like, what is this? I don't know about you. I'm struggling to hear what he's saying because of the dancy hands, the dancy pants stuff. And I recently watched a YouTube video about, public speaking, and that, I guess who am I to criticize him? I'm Italian. I'm using my hands all the time on these videos. But there is actually this is training. This is actually very, very precise media training and practice. But he's taking it to levels I don't think we've ever seen before. The kind of theatrics at play here. I'm going to try to listen, but my eyes can't help but get lost in his amazing hand movements.
And I've got search and rescue teams out. We've got cadaver dogs out, and there's likely to be a lot more.
Over the course of the next several years, Los Angeles will be host to the World Cup, and then the Super Bowl, and then the Olympics. Yeah. With this rebuilding effort needing to take place, is LA going to be ready for all of those global events?
My humble position, and it's not just being naively optimistic.
I can't do it. Okay. I grew up watching SCTV, and there's a skit that is coming to mind. In so many ways, Gavin Newsom is this guy played by Eugene Levy.
And see me, Alpac, for Alpac's used cars. No song and dance here. 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 No song and dance here.
That's what this is. All of this is a song and dance. Gavin Newsom has been in leadership and governance in California for 20 years. Mayor of San Francisco, lieutenant governor of California, and now governor. One of the things at the heart, as we heard from Michael Schellenberger and others, of the fires is the homelessness disaster. This fire in particular was of the sort that it was most likely caused by a person, not a lightning strike or a natural event. The winds obviously are what made it spread like wildfire, literally, but this wasn't just a wildfire in a forest. This is an urban fire, perhaps set by Los Angeles' blooming homelessness population. This was the issue that Gavin Newsom said he was going to solve with billions and billions and billions of dollars. In fact, over the reign of Gavin Newsom, the California state budget has more than doubled. By just about every account, the quality of life for Californians has gone down. This is a man who personifies failure, but not just failure, the nature of politics. Because he has failed his way to the top spot in one of the largest economies in the world. And he has done it largely by song and dance. But, these are all style points, right? Him being Mr. Super Polished Slick Hair, song and dance talk. Let me try to get back and hear what he's saying, because what he's saying in this answer is actually quite radical and crazy.
That only reinforces the imperative moving quickly doing in the spirit of collaboration and cooperation. And all that opportunity and that pride and spirit that comes from not just hosting those 3 iconic games and venues, but also the opportunity, I think, to rebuild at the same time. And that's why we're already organizing a Marshall Plan. We already have a team looking and reimagining LA 2.0.
We're already reimagining. We got a Marshall Plan. This is the favorite of these people. They love the Marshall Plan and the Manhattan Project and the Hoover Dam. We're sitting here, it's 2025, and a large part of our political elite operates as a kind of empty-headed zombie of the greatest hits of the 20th century. And that's what's on display here. It's this, we're going to centrally plan our way to a better, brighter future. Yes, we're already laying the foundations for Los Angeles 2.0. Why in the world would anyone trust you to redesign the city that you allowed to burn? Who's buying this? This is the heart of the problem. But we know what this is. We have seen this over and over again.
You never want a serious crisis to go to waste. And what I mean by that, it's an opportunity to do things that you think you could not do before.
Now, it's not clear when you've been in leadership in a state as long as Gavin Newsom has, what are these secret special plans that he's had that he's just been waiting to share with the electorate for how to reimagine the world, how to redesign California society. The reality is he doesn't have this. He's this.
See me, Alpac, for Alpac's used cars. No song and dance here.
No song and dance here. His song and dance is communism, a just slightly refined version of a much more crude communist vision. This is a central planning vision. It is the vision of the anointed, as Thomas Sowell likes to say. These are the people who believe that they have been given the path forward. That's why forward is often a slogan in far left politics. Forward, onward. It's clear where we need to go next. It's the 2.0. It's Los Angeles 2.0. It's America 2.0. Gavin Newsom, with his song and dance and his carefully choreographed, perfectly synchronized hand movements, is really like the T-1000 upgrade model of plain old radical Marxist governance. What do I mean by that? Well, of course, California is sort of the Terminator state, right? We had the actual Terminator, Arnold Schwarzenegger, as the governor not all that long ago. And in the movie T2, the T-1000 model was the liquid metal that could transform into any shape, take the shape of any other person, could sort of move through the fire and push through the bars of the cell to escape any trap set for him. That's Gavin Newsom. And one of the things that people like Gavin Newsom are smart enough to do is avoid the kinds of mistakes that more nakedly radical politicians like Karen Bass, the mayor of Los Angeles, did. She, of course, is transparently a radical communist, but don't take my word for it. Let's just look back at good old local news coverage, shall we?
President Obama's historic visit to Cuba. Was this the right move after decades of isolating the island nation, or did he offer legitimacy to an autocratic government it doesn't deserve? We talk with Congresswoman Karen Bass of the House Foreign Relations Committee, who took part in the Cuban trip and has long advocated for diplomatic ties with the Castro regime.
And let me just say this real quick. I don't think the sanctions against Cuba have been particularly effective, right? I mean, the Cuban leadership hasn't changed. So on their own grounds, I think these sanctions against Cuba have been a failure. That being said, this is a communist regime that had missiles from our mortal enemy, the Soviet Union, placed on it not that long ago. So the politics of Cuba is complicated, but that doesn't excuse what comes next.
Good morning and welcome to News Conference. With us, the Honorable Karen Bass, member of the U.S. House of Representatives from the 37th District of California, all the way from Century City to South L.A., member of House Judiciary and House Foreign Affairs. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
And just recently back from Cuba, where you went with the President of the United States on that historic visit. Tell us about that. First of all, You had been there before, more often than anybody else had from the delegation.
Well, it was amazing to be there in a historical moment. First president to visit the island in 88 years.
And you had been there on plenty of occasions before. Why was this so meaningful specifically for you?
Well, one, because I actually always had a problem and a disagreement that I feel as a U.S. citizen, I should be able to go anywhere in the world I choose. I didn't like the fact that my government restricted me from going to Cuba.
And so I went 8 times.
Some would say this was a little too early to legitimize an autocratic government that does not foster basic human rights.
Well, if you just think about it, think of who we have relationships with around the world. If we're going to judge leaders who we have relationships with around the world, we wouldn't have relationships with too many countries.
You know, I like to give credit where credit's due, right? So, sure, fine. The U.S. has done all kinds of bad stuff. But it's one thing to be a reasonable critic. It's another thing to adopt a radical destructive ideology. And in the case of Karen Bass, that is exactly what she's done. It wasn't simply, I should be able to go wherever I want. I'm going to go. And then I'm going to go again and again and again and again and again and again. Let's dig a little deeper into this because you don't need to go to fringe right-wing sources to understand what's going on here. The Atlantic magazine, covered this. When Karen Bass went to work in Castro's Cuba in 1973, Bass, who's now a potential Biden VP pick, traveled to Cuba with the Venceramos Brigade. Quote, I didn't have any illusions that the people of Cuba had the same freedoms I did, she said. This is just from the top of it. The article goes on to explain that she was very much enmeshed in this radical group that favored Castro's communism and wanted to bring it to the United States and bring Americans to and from to, get us on board with the program. Let's hear from one of the brigadiers himself.
The Venceramos Brigade, which has been in solidarity with Cuba since 1969, is currently the oldest U.S.-based solidarity group with Cuba.
And just to be clear, this is not a solidarity group with Cuba, as in the Cuban people. This is a solidarity group with the Cuban communists, with Castro and his regime.
We do voluntary labor and bring material aid to Cuba and bring Americans to Cuba to learn about the Cuban Revolution, to build stronger connections there, especially to then bring those connections back to the United States and, and help.
Yeah, just to bring possible future vice presidents to Cuba to learn about the revolution and bring it back to the United States. But this is what this is. This is who these people are.
Build our movements here.
Build our movement here. So, good old Wikipedia lists Karen Bass at the top of the list of notable brigadistas. But it's not just Karen Bass. Former mayor of Los Angeles, Antonio Villaraigosa, is also a notable brigadista. And again, because I want to be an honest broker for everyone here at Dad Saves America, I figured let's just take a second look. We clicked in and you find this New Yorker article highlighting it. Villaraigosa visited Cuba with the Venceramos Brigade, a radical group. So these are confirmed things. These are things that these people are proud of. Lest you think that this was sort of, the youthful radicalism of like a Berkeley grad that just wants to change the world for the better and isn't really sure. This is an apologist for communism. Here she is, at the passing of Fidel Castro. And I think it's important to read what she had to say about the murderous dictator in Cuba. As Cuba begins 9 days of mourning, I wish to express my condolences to the Cuban people and the family of Fidel Castro. The passing of the Comandante El Jefe is a great loss to the people of Cuba. I hope together our two nations will continue on the new path of support and collaboration with one another and continue in the new direction of diplomacy. Now, a few years back, a grandchild of Fidel Castro got into a little trouble, or at least I should say got highlighted, for posting pictures on Instagram of him gallivanting around the world, living the high life on yachts and going to fancy restaurants. As As is often the case, these autocrats, like the Castros, end up quite wealthy themselves, sometimes into the billions, in fact, while decrying the evil theft of the mighty capitalists who steal from workers. One can't help but see the echoes of Gavin Newsom dining at the French Laundry while he's locked down the entire society in a totalitarian hell. This is the force at work. This is the sort of utopian ideology that makes its way from academia, frankly, into governance and into doing things like trying to keep the water hydrants running. So it turns out that Karen Bass's connections to radical communists probably scuttled her chances of being the vice presidential pick. The fact that she was even in consideration is shocking. But this points to why Gavin Newsom is sort of the perfection of this sort of elite aristocratic model. He believes the same stuff, but he's smart enough and has been instructed well enough to avoid making these kinds of crude mistakes. And so we are left with the slick talker who hasn't gone to Cuba like Karen Bass, but believes all the same stuff. And so with that in mind, let's listen to his vision for California now, this opportunity that he's so excited to take advantage of through this lens.
And all that opportunity and that pride and spirit that comes from not just hosting those 3 iconic games and venues, but also the opportunity, I think, to rebuild at the same time. And that's why we're already organizing a Marshall Plan. We already have a team looking in Reimagining LA 2.0, and we're making sure everyone's included, not just the folks on the coast, people here that were ravaged by this disaster.
Already got the plan. Already got the blueprint for the smart city, Los Angeles 2.0, the complete reconstituting of the social order. Why do I think this plan has been on the shelf?
You just said you're organizing a Marshall Plan for the rebuilding of California. What is that Marshall Plan? Tell us about this Marshall Plan.
We're just starting to lay out. I mean, we're still fighting these fires, so we're already talking to...
I guess, again, should I criticize someone for uncomfortable laughter? I do it all the time. Yes, I should. I'm not trying to reconstruct entire cities.
To city leaders, we're already talking to civic leaders, we're already talking to business leaders and nonprofits, we're talking to labor leaders. We're starting to organize how we can put together a collection of individuals on philanthropy for recovery, how we can organize the region, how we can make sure that we are seeking federal assistance for the Olympics more broadly, but also federal assistance for the recovery efforts.
So you hear all this talk of all these pieces being brought together in just a week. Just a week. All of this, every single facet of society is apparently being brought to the table to reconstruct Los Angeles. That's the same amount of time that the governor and the mayor had to respond to the National Weather Service warning that Los Angeles was at high risk of catastrophic fire due to the winds. And one just has to wonder, could it be that it's just convenient that people who believe in radical social transformation, who read Leninist Marxists and spout their talking points, often just with a couple layers of fine-tuning, manage to be so visionary about how they're going to reconstruct society, but can't keep reservoirs right next to the fire from being empty for a full year, which is what actually happened, that there was an actual millions of gallon reservoir, as we heard from Michael Schellenberger, left empty, that may have radically improved the outcomes of this event. I don't know who's buying this. I really don't. But it goes so much deeper than just plans for this new vision of Los Angeles 2.0. These people, this mindset really believes in fundamentally re-architecting your mind.
We can galvanize the community with folks that love this community to really develop a mindset so that at scale, we're dealing with the scope of this tragedy and responding to it at scale.
That's not just word salad. One of the things that's happened, especially with Kamala Harris, another sort of Californian who failed her way up into disaster, we have been hit with word salads. But you need to listen to what's being said. This is a cousin of imagining what could be unburdened by what has been. So if the Palisades have been unburdened by their structures and their society, and now we get to imagine what could be unburdened by that, this is the reimagining of people in the eyes of socialist man, bringing together the community to create a new mindset. Who in Los Angeles or anywhere in America thinks that Gavin Newsom knows how to re-architect their mindset? I don't want you anywhere near my mindset. But that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with people who fundamentally don't think you have the right ideas, have the right mindset. You don't have the right desires. What do you want, a car with a V8 engine? No, you'll drive an electric. And by the way, don't charge it on the weekends. That is the vision being put forward by Newsom and by the more crudely radical people on the left, on the radical left, like Karen Bass. There's one more lesson that is worth looking at because you get to see the entire progression of communist failure in this event. And it's what happens when the central plans don't work.
I ask you, we've got to deal with this misinformation. There were hurricane force winds of mis and disinformation, lies. People want to divide this country, and we're going to have to address that as well.
Look, you know, I think you're getting a bad rap. I know you're getting a bad rap about these fire hydrants don't have enough water in them. Give me a break.
Give me a break. Well, you're getting a bad rap, you know, there's water in them things with the fire and stuff. Give me a break. Think about this. The man has been in power for 20 years. He's known about this problem specifically for over a week before the fire started, but has known about the risks for years, as I pointed out in last Friday's video. 2018, the fire in Paradise, California. 2020, new fires. This isn't new. And the plans don't work. The plans aren't put into action. I don't know what these plans are. I don't know what any of the plans ever were. Gavin Newsom has talked about solving homelessness and has spent tens of billions of dollars on it. And there are more homeless people on the streets in California today than ever before. The more he spends, the more they have. What we are seeing here with these calls to censor the public for daring to criticize failed governance is called the ratchet effect. That was coined by economist and historian Robert Higgs, noting that central planning failures end up being like a ratchet that clicks into place, only moving in one direction. More control, more control. Click, click, click goes the ratchet. Each failure meaning more money, more budget, more power, more control to the people who caused it in the first place. This is the reason why socialist economies fall apart and end up being totalitarian hellholes. This is why Argentina at the turn of the century was one of the wealthiest places per capita in the world and has been so thoroughly destroyed by far left populists that it is now being run by an anarcho-capitalist as their last hope. This is why Venezuela, which was also a very wealthy country not that long ago, quickly voted its way into communist catastrophe, and they will probably have to shoot their way out, which tends to be the way this goes. We can't let this happen here. We can't. That's what these people want. That's what they want. But don't take my word for it. Take good old Gavin Newsom in earlier times himself.
And by the way, as California goes, so goes the rest of the nation. It's inevitable. This door's wide open now. It's going to happen, whether you like it or not. This is the future, and it's now.
Or maybe not. Or at least not yet. As we sit here, we're heading into the weekend, and on Monday is the inauguration of Donald Trump to his second term as president of the United States with an outright majority of the vote, including majorities in unlikely places like Latino men. So I don't think we are destined to become California, and I hope that California is not destined to remain this kind of California. We should want more for our fellow Americans than this and then that. I hope this is a turning point for the state, as we are perhaps in a turning point for the country. Have a great weekend.
No song and dance here. No song and dance here. No song and dance here. No song and dance here.